Curling that hair. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I have just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, actually, don't listen to him. That is just a blank piece of paper.
Maybe, but we do have a lot of injury news to get to. Injuries that are going to shake up your lineups today.
Plus, our expert's going to help you figure out who to pay up for and who to pass on.
And your must-plays, the slate-approved picks. That sounds good. I'll have that.
That's 90 minutes of the sweat coming your way right now.
Ha-ha! Good morning, Internet. This is The Sweat. She is Jessie Coffield. I am Emerson Lotzia. We are taking you up to kickoff, 1 o'clock. Hit us up with any questions you have on Facebook. We're going to do our best to answer all of them throughout this show, so stick with us.
First things first, injury news. Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette is unlikely to play against the Patriots. I'm so sorry. With a hamstring injury, so Aaron Rodgers will, however, play on one leg again. No ligament damage in his knee.
All right, Atlanta's Devontae Freeman, this is news that came out yesterday, will miss 2 to 3 weeks with a knee injury. So Tevin Coleman, if you had him as a handcuff, he steps into that starting role. That's kind of good news for you. Adam Schefter reporting Marcus Mariota still can't grip the football normally. I hear that's a problem when you're a quarterback. He'll be a game-time decision. The team still has no idea who it'll start at quarterback. Possibly Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, that would be very interesting, don't you think? Tampa Bay wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, he cleared a concussion protocol and will play against the Eagles. And stunning news out of Cleveland last night, the Browns saying that they're going to release Josh Gordon tomorrow, but teams are reportedly calling off the hook, looking into a trade situation.
Yeah, and I know he wants to go to the Cowboys or San Francisco. The Browns don't want to trade him within the AFC, so sorry, Patriots fans and all of you other AFC guys. Time to bring in the big dogs now. Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich of DK Live. Let's rip through these guys and get the fantasy impact of each move. Starting with Aaron Rodgers, he's going to fight through the pain. How big of a risk is playing this guy, in your opinion, Jeff?
It's pretty risky. I mean, the matchup for him obviously is a downgrade to begin with the Minnesota Vikings. The good news with Rodgers to me is that it brings Randall Cobb back into play. That's the player that I was really waiting on this news for. Randall Cobb's 4,600, 10 targets last week. Now, I think rostering Aaron Rodgers this week is probably a bit of a stretch. Even a healthy Aaron Rodgers, this isn't a good spot for him. But when you have a guy this depreciated in value like Randall Cobb, who's actually going to have the best matchup in the secondary for the Packers, it's big news for Cobb's value this week. He's definitely firmly in play today.
Reed, what about for you? Does anyone else's value kind of increase, as Jeff was just mentioning, with the questionable Aaron Rodgers here?
Well, I mean, it raises all tides. I mean, you saw what Kaiser did in the, 9 snaps that he got. I mean, it was completely terrible. It was night and day. So, yeah, he raises the impact for all of these guys. Jeff's right. Cobb is in play. Geronimo Allison obviously is in play a little bit more than he would be if Kaiser's under center. Devontae Adams is dealing with his own set of injuries with that shoulder. So the thing about the Vikings and what they do extremely well outside of play a really good holistic defense is they disguise their blitzes really well. So if Rodgers, who has the ability to run right outside of the pocket, if he's staying back there, that presents a different look and a scary look, really, frankly, if the line can't block for this guy. So, yeah, I'm staying away. He's 3% projected ownership to 5%. You might see it bumped up a little bit because people might get contrarian and bump that up a little bit. But, yeah, I'm staying away from him.
Now, if Leonard Fournette does not play as expected, where do his owners go, Reed?
I mean, this is an interesting one, too. This is a late game, right? So you could probably have to leave that flex spot open. I mean, the obvious answer is TJ Yeldon. He, again, dealing with his own set of injuries. Maybe more of a maintenance thing in terms of not getting him hurt because, again, you don't want to start Ryan Grant back there. Or Corey Grant, excuse me. So you go to TJ Yeldon in that spot. Some other guys a little bit lower that I like. But when you're talking about volume and upside, it's going to go to TJ Yeldon. Like, even if Fournette was playing, this would be a scary proposition because he could go out. He's dealt with his set of injuries before, soft tissue, ankle, what have you. So I would go to TJ Yeldon in this spot.
Jeff, no Fournette. Where do you think people are going?
I mean, I think TJ Yeldon's pretty much in play right now. I mean, I talked about him with Pat Mayo a couple days ago, and it was just looking like too risky a spot if you want to chance one of these people in the late swap. With Fournette almost like 90% ruled out at this point. I mean, TJ Yeldon at 5,600 is going to be in a workhorse role. And he's going to be really low owned compared to a guy like Tevin Coleman. So I think he's in play for GPPs. If you do want to keep that late swap open, put him in the flex. You could sub in a guy like Cooper Kupp if Fournette somehow does become active. But I think Yeldon's a little bit interesting. I do prefer Lamar Miller over him, but he's definitely in play now because we have so much. We have a little bit more news on Fournette. So,
Jeff, you mentioned Coleman. How will he benefit now that he's going to be the guy next 2-3 weeks with Freeman dealing with that knee injury?
I mean, it's pretty clear he's going to get more touches, right? It's just a volume thing. The Falcons have like Ito Smith. I just don't see him getting a big role here. Devin Coleman is quite capable of being a workhorse back. He actually profiles more as a workhorse back than Devontae Freeman does. So he's a capable pass catcher. He's going to get goal line carries. It's a big 2 or 3 weeks here for him. The matchup today isn't great, but the Falcons are 6-point favorites. I understand eating the chalk with him today. I really do, even against a guy, with Luke Kuechly on the other side. I just think it's too good a spot. It's too depressed a price not to get at least some exposure. Definitely a cash game lock for me, but it's a big couple weeks for him. He should put up at least 1 or 2 really good fantasy games.
Reed, should Tevin Coleman owners eat the chalk?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you get a workhorse back at 5,300, like Jeff was saying, you want to eat that chalk, and it allows you to go other places like at receiver where you have some really good spots. So yeah, absolutely, I do like that call. The thing with him, like Jeff was saying, he's got a tough matchup, but he's got New Orleans and Cincy coming up in those weeks 3 and 4. Those are a little bit better spots, you would think, because if you look at Carolina, they didn't allow Zeke to do that much, right? So there could be a potential soft spot here. But at the same time, when you get 18 to 20 touches, which is what he saw when Freeman has been out, this guy got 8 touchdowns. We talked about it in our earlier shows this week. 8 touchdowns as the 1B back in that running back by committee. This guy is a workhorse, like Jeff was saying. 18 to 20 carries at 5,300. Yeah, play him.
Reed, you steering clear of the Titans if Mariota can't suit up? I know you might be familiar with his injury.
Yeah. Yeah, I banged my elbow getting a shirt. And, I can't grip this pen as well. No, I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Like, you're out of my flex spot, Reed. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I know. It's like Caron saying that he's the same as, in his men's pickup league. But no, I mean, if you're running, this Houston defense looks more and more appealing, a potential GPP spot because of the other players or the other defenses like the Chargers and the Rams that a lot of people are going to flock to. But if you got Gabbert out there, I mean, Vrabel and LaFleur won't commit to Gabbert. I mean, that's how bad this potential spot could be. Dion Lewis could potentially be an RB3 flex. You saw what Gabbert did with Carlos Hyde in terms of those targets. But yeah, I mean, this whole offense is scary if Gabbert is in. And Mariota, they only have 2 active quarterbacks on that roster. So if Gabbert is a starter, Mariota might be active just in case. But man, stay away.
Guys, couple real quick, hitting up Facebook here. Lots of questions coming in, as you would expect. Is James White a good option with Burkhead and Sony Michel as question marks? Actually, I do believe they're both going to play. It's a report that just came out. Or would Kenny Golladay work, in your opinion, Reed?
I mean, James White is in a fantastic spot in terms of what you just mentioned, but you always have to bake in that it is the Patriots. You never really know what's going to happen. Like Burkhead still has to pass concussion protocol, going through the pregame protocol to make sure he's cleared. Sony Michel, we just don't know, right? James White should be slated for a huge amount of targets. I do really like Golladay in this spot. He's, a sub 5K. He's going up against the San Francisco secondary. That's, potentially a little bit better, or excuse me, a little bit worse than the Jets. I don't know how I'm saying that, but I would go Golladay in this spot just because I don't know James White's, exact projection. But he should be projected for a decent amount of targets.
Jeff, Trey Burton or Jimmy Graham? It's a season-long PPR.
I'd go Trey Burton this week. It's a much better matchup for Seattle now that, or against Seattle now that Bobby Wagner's out. I think Trey Burton's going to rebound here. Jimmy Graham, again, the tight end spot against Minnesota, it's a little thin. Definitely Trey Burton for me out of those 2.
Hey, Jeff, is Calvin Ridley a sneaky play today with no Freeman? You could see the Falcons going to the air a lot. What do you think?
No.
No. Pass. Hard pass.
Easy enough. All right, guys, until next time when we get your anchor plays for this Sunday. But for now, good morning, Steve Buchanan. Good morning, Julian Edlow. Good morning, Rosalie Michaels. It's chase or fade time. Patrick Mahomes will be the quarterback with the most DK fantasy points today. Chase or fade, Steven?
Man, I'm gonna fade this one, but I'm kind of iffy about that one. I mean, look how impressive Mahomes was at what he was able to do on just 15 completions versus the Chargers. 256 yards, 4 touchdowns, adding on 21 rushing yards as well. Now we have what's projected to be one of the highest scoring games of the week. I think it's going to be real close, but, there's a couple other guys I like a little bit more here. Obviously, Ben Roethlisberger on the other side of this game has got to be a candidate there. Drew Brees is not getting enough love at all either. I feel like he's in a really great spot in a potential shootout with the Browns today. So I'm going to fade this one, but it's definitely going to be close.
What do you think here, Julian? Is he going to be the highest scoring quarterback today, Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, the upside is obvious here. He's in, I think it's the highest projected game of the day, and he's a road underdog. So we saw, what Mahomes did last week to the Chargers. He's definitely in a great place, but I'm going to fade him as the highest scoring QB on the slate just because I feel like there's more upside in the field like Steve does. And it starts on the other side of the matchup with Ben Roethlisberger, who even in that terrible weather in Cleveland last week still managed to keep finding Antonio Brown, still managed to keep finding Juju Smith or Smith-Schuster. So I just think that there are other places to go where you might get, if you want to pay down for Tyrod Taylor, look at what Ryan Fitzpatrick did in New Orleans last week. I just think there's too many spots to pay for, but Mahomes is certainly a good play at his price.
Yeah, a thrilling tie last week against Cleveland. Rosalie, it looks like you got like a haircut or something. You look amazing. Do you, chase or fade Mahomes being the top scoring quarterback? I know you've always been really high on the Chiefs.
I have. I mean, he was 4th overall in fantasy points last week. So, you got to love the guy, but to say that he's going to be the top scoring quarterback this week, I agree with the other guys. You know what? You got Rivers out there, you got Breeze out there. They're both going to have big games as well as Ben. And so, yeah, I love him. I love the Hill connection, but I don't see him being the top QB this week. But great price on him.
All right, guys, David Johnson will have more than 150 total yards against the Rams. Chaser fade, Rosalie, is he going to bounce back from that pretty disappointing Week 1 performance?
I'm an Arizona girl, so it's hard for me to say that David Johnson is not going to have a gazillion yards this week. But, yeah, you know what, against the Rams, he's had 67 last week, which is obviously really disappointing. I think he'll have around 100. I think he'll still have a much better week this week than he did last week. But I think around 100. I don't think he gets to 150 this week.
Steve, what do you think? Is he going to be a Week 2 bounce back?
I mean, if he's going to do it, he's going to have to do it through the air because he's not going to do it on the ground. I mean, look, the Cardinals should be getting him some short passes and help out Bradford because he needs all the help he can get right now. He had 9 targets last week. He turned those into 5 catches and 30 yards. Look, back in 2016, he was averaging just under 11 yards per catch last year. He needs that type of production to really help the Cardinals out here. The Rams have Sue and Donald up front, so I definitely don't like his chances here. Sure, his salary dropped $600, but he's still the 4th most expensive running back on this slate. 3rd, if you don't count running backs who don't show up to their job. Johnson's just way too expensive for me in this spot here, so I'm going to fade that one.
Julian, a lot expected of the guy. Do you think he's going to be able to deliver?
Yeah, well, I actually did get a haircut a couple of days ago. Thanks for noticing, Emerson. But
wow.
We actually gave you a shout out earlier this week about it because you no longer look like Steve.
Well, that's definitely the goal. But I'm fading on going under 150 yards here on David Johnson for all the reasons that were just discussed. But the main one, I think, is just that David Johnson's role has clearly diminished with Bruce Arians out as coach. He only played on 36 snaps last week. That was 68% of Arizona's snaps. He wasn't running as many routes as he was last season, and only 37, I think, of those yards came on the ground as a running back. So David Johnson, I think, showed me a lot last week to kind of be down on him for the entire season and definitely Week 2 until we see him kind of show the running back that he was all the way back in 2016. I don't really have much interest here.
Julian, chaser fade that Gronk will score less than 15 DK fantasy points against that ridiculously good Jaguars defense.
Yeah, I think this was the closest one for me, and I'm going to fade it. I think Gronk is somewhere like right above it, like 16, 17, 18 DK points, just because the Patriots, we saw, like Chris Hogan was not a huge factor last week. James White is great to dink and dunk to, but like the big play is whether Jalen Ramsey is on Gronk or not, have to come through Gronk in this game. So primetime players make primetime plays. I think the Patriots are going to have to test that theory with Gronk this week and force it to him. And usually when it goes to him, things go well. So I think he goes slightly above 15 DK points here.
Yeah, Steve, it'll be interesting to see how the Jaguars attack covering Gronk if they're going to go unconventional and put Ramsey on him. I'd love to see that matchup after all the trash talk really the past all summer long, or since that kid was born, to be honest with you. So chase or fade, Gronk will score less than 15 DK fantasy points against the Jags.
Why don't you just wear a Jaguars jersey when you do the show?
Right? Why don't you just pretend you're not a homer for 5 seconds?
I'm not.
I'm
not saying I'm not a homer. I would like to wear a Jaguar shirt right now, but I'm not allowed to.
I'm really sorry, guys.
Well, good. I mean, you look better in that shirt anyways.
Thank you.
When we look back at last season when these teams faced each other, Gronk only had 3 targets and made 1 catch. But when we look at the 25 of Brady's 38 pass attempts during that game, they're with players that are no longer with the Patriots. Brandon Cooks, Danny Amendola, Dion Lewis, all not with the team anymore. So Gronk is going to have to be a big part of this game, whether they want him to be or not, just by the amount of people that they don't have anymore. I mean, he should be matching up against safety Barry Church, which I think isn't as bad as a matchup as people perceive it. So I think it's safe to say that Gronk can have a little bit more than 15 DK fantasy points. I'm definitely not going crazy here, but I don't think the matchup is as bad as it should be, unless, of course, Ramsey does go over there, but we haven't seen anything on that. But I think Gronk is actually not as bad as a spot as people make it out to be.
Rosalie, where do you sit on this?
Yeah, I sit on the fade on this. He had over 16 fantasy points last week against Houston, but I disagree with the other guys. I think Brady's got plenty of targets, and I do think Ramsey's going to be on Gronk the whole time. The kid talks a lot of trash, and I like it, but, he did call Tom Brady, said he sucks, which I'm like, wow, how do you say that? I think Tom Brady's going to make him regret those choice of words, but I don't think it's with Gronk this week. I think we're going to see a lot of James White, maybe some Philip Dorsett in there, and I think Hogan has a little bit of a better game than last week. So I don't think that he's going to get 15 fantasy points this week. You have to look at the fact that he was only 1 of 3 in the last game. That says a lot, and Ramsey was on him pretty much that time as well. I really like Jared Cook as instead. Gronk is $7K. You can get Jared Cook for $3,600. I think it's a much better matchup, much better play.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to rip through some of these Facebook questions. Steve, Redskins defense and Houston defense, are they the best value?
Yeah, I think they're definitely up there. I also like the Broncos too as well. Broncos only 3,300 this week. I feel like they're really underpriced, but I definitely like I like those ones as well. I think they're good plays here, especially Houston.
Julian, Funchess or Crowder, PPR?
Ooh, I like going with Devin Funchess there just because of the upside with Greg Olsen now gone.
Rosalie, your thoughts on a Rams stack?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I love a Rams stack. If you're going to go Goff and Kupp, it's a great Rams stack. It's against the Cardinals, who made the Washington Redskins look really good last week. So, yeah, I love a Rams stack with Goff and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's just getting a ton of targets. The other wide receivers, I love Woods and I love Cooks as well. But, Kupp just gets all those targets, so you can't deny him. So I'm going to see a lot of Kupp today.
One more for you, Steve. Nelson Aguilar or Kenny Stills, PPR flex?
Love Aguilar. Got to get him in that matchup today.
All right, guys, hang tight. We're going to have your top stacks of the day ready, but Pat Mayo has another way for you to win big today with our good friends at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Pat Mayo here with an exciting new way to heat up your Sundays this football season. DraftKings has teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings to bring you a fantasy experience like no other. Blazin Fantasy Football, a new free game only available inside Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Want to win free wings for a year, game tickets, Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, or Blazin Rewards points? Here's how. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, download the Blazin Rewards app, and join. Already a member? Not a problem. Just log in and fire up the app. Click or tap the Blazin Fantasy Football icon, join a contest, draft your lineup, and get ready to compete against rivals in all Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Blaze your way up the leaderboard by drafting who you think will be the top 8 players, including kickers. Best part? you've got a chance to really rack up the score with your Blazin pick. It's worth double points, so choose wisely. Don't just wing it. Draft your team in one of Sunday's 4 contests before each half of the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. Then, grab some wings, sit back, and watch your team light up the leaderboard. Come back every Sunday for new contests each week. DraftKings and Buffalo Wild Wings, the right stack for Sundays.
All right, let's get you up to speed on some inactives and injury news. Aaron Rodgers, he's going to go against the Vikings. Jags running back Leonard Fournette is unlikely to play against the Patriots. Atlanta's Devontae Freeman will miss 2 to 3 weeks with a knee injury.
Let's another Devontae real quick. Wide receiver Devontae Parker from the Miami Dolphins. Everyone kind of expected him to play. Been dealing with that broken finger. He was a full participant in practice the last 2 days this week, but he is not going to go. So that's big for all you Kenny Stills owners out there. Adam Schefter is saying Marcus Mariota still can't grip the football. Normally, he's going to be a game-time decision. Team still struggling who they're going to start. I mean, like, if you can't grip the football, they're going to be stuck playing Blaine Gabbert. Deshaun Jackson, by the way, clearing concussion protocol, will play against the Eagles, his former team. Big, deep threat there. And stunning news out of Cleveland that Jessie mentioned at the top of our show. The Browns say they will release Josh Gordon tomorrow, but teams now are just calling out, left and right, trying to land a trade here, but the Browns do not want to trade him within the AFC.
Yeah, trying to get him out of the AFC.
Yeah, he wants to go. Cowboys and 49ers are his top 2 preferences there.
All right, guys, time to get your must-plays from our favorite Canadian friends, Pat Mayo and Gary and Thorne, live up in Toronto. Good morning to you both, and please take it away.
Yeah, Pat Mayo here inside the Pat Mayo Experience Studios. Gary and Thorne here with me. If you missed it, no, we just did an hour and a half live taking everyone's questions, but we saved the must-plays for this special segment as a part of the sweat. The must-plays of the day. You went with James Conner last week. That turned out to be a pretty savvy idea.
Worked out well.
I'm going to that well this week. I still think that he's around $1,500 underpriced. $6,700 is an excellent price point. And there's a pivot that I also really like off of him, or you could just play them both together. No one's really talking about Dalvin Cook, who looked amazing last week and gets the Packers.
Yeah, and there was absolutely no target restriction in that game or snap restriction in that game. And look, I think that Jordan Howard is a fine running back, but the Packers sure did their due diligence making him look amazing last week. So I think Dalvin Cook's a great play. I would be with you. I think James Conner is still in must-play territory until that price point gets up to about $8,000. Like, you just have to look at this. How much do you value James Conner as a percentage of Le'Veon Bell? If you think he's even 80% of Le'Veon Bell
still
on
too
offense, he's too low based upon you still get to see what Le'Veon Bell would be priced had he been active. And it screams just discount right now for James Conner. I would say going way down the running back tier, and I think you follow me on this one too. Alfred Morris. I got a lot of Alfred Morris.
I got a lot of Alfred Morris too.
It's a very strange sensation, but you look at the way that the snaps, the carries were distributed in that game, with the game script probably playing out in Washington's advantage in this contest at home as the favorite. I don't think Morris gets 20 touches, but I think he's over 15. And at 3.6 with all the goal line work, as he saw last week, had all 3 goal line snaps inside the 5-yard line, I don't think that's going to change. So all Alfred Morris really needs to do is score a touchdown and rush for like 40 yards, and he's already brought back value.
That's the whole thing. If he can find, and we saw even last week after he put the ball on the ground, he still received the goal line work on the Niners. They're in a much easier matchup this time around against the Lions. And you hit on it. Like, if he scores 2 touchdowns, he's a week winner.
Yeah. Because 3.6, you don't really have to do a whole lot, again, to reach value at that price point.
There are guys that I'm playing in the $3,000 area, not many. I think tight end is the big one, and you have one of 3 options at tight end. I guess you could pay all the way up to Gronk, which I'm not doing. I've used a little bit of Ertz just because I think he's in a really good spot, 10 targets last week, but he's very expensive. So there's the 3 cheap tight ends that everyone's gravitating towards. The main 2, George Kittle, Jared Cook. Everyone knows my stance on Jared Cook, not playing that loser. It's not happening. I'll use George Kittle instead, but I like David Njoku at $3,000. Everyone's talking about, hey, Rashard Higgins, Anthony Callaway is starting for the Browns, and everyone's going to play him. I just don't trust the Browns. Like, Jarvis Landry is basically a must-play at $6,300.
I was going to say that too.
At receiver, but Njoku could reach double-digit targets in this game too, and what projects to be a pass-happier game script than even last week. The Steelers got up by 14 points, but the Browns closed that gap pretty quickly. Like, they could be trailing a lot in this game.
Turnovers and strange turnovers had a bit to do with that. But I would say those are unique game scripts. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think, and we talked about this on the 10 o'clock show, where in this particular game where you want to be stacking the Saints and the Browns and probably want to get some exposure to the Browns because it's going to be the less owned of the two sides. You just need to be investing in the shares of that offense you actually have some sort of security in. And the only two guys you can trust whose roles won't be altered by the Josh Gordon news, in fact, could somehow increase. I have said that I don't think Jarvis Landry is going to get more than 15 targets. He's probably around 11 to 13 in this game. But that's amazing, especially in full point PPR. But Njoku's the other guy in that share because even with Callaway starting, are we honestly thinking someone's going to go from 16% of the snaps last week to like 60, 70%? No, he's probably going to be around 50% with Rashard Higgins. That's just a mess. I would say you probably play Callaway now between the two, knowing that he is starting.
Sure.
Because he has the higher ceiling.
If you had to pick between the two, yes, that would be the way that you would go. It's just a situation I don't want to be a part of when there's another guy who I know is going to be on the field and running routes and is the red zone presence. Why not just play him?
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I will say
you love Jared Cook.
I will stand for Jared Cook for a second. It's just this week. Denver, look, we always say you can't carry trends over from 2017 until we've seen them in 2018. It seems again in a situation where really Denver brought back a lot of not only their back seven, but specifically the cornerbacks, the safeties, and the middle linebackers. They've proven time and time again for the better part of a year and a bit now that they cannot cover tight ends. And I just think it's a very similar defensive setup to what we saw Jared Cook exploit against the Rams. I think there's very good cover corners on the outside, and that's just going to funnel targets to the tight end position. I'm not saying you're using Jared Cook every week for the rest of the season because we know this is a guy who is inconsistent to say the least, but this is a smash spot for Jared Cook.
Is there a must-play quarterback? Because I don't know if there is.
I think if there is, it's Mahomes. But I don't think there is necessarily. That's the thing. You have Mahomes, you have Ben, you have Tyrod. Like there's enough
Alex
variety.
Smith is there. Like Deshaun Watson, no one's using. That seems like a great spot for him.
And we've talked about this before. No one's really going to use Case Keenum. And we like both Denver wide receivers, so it would make sense logically that we would also like the man throwing them the football.
It's true, but it doesn't seem like one like Breeze, I guess, is the one that's going to be the highest owned on DraftKings this week.
But I don't want to pay up.
I just don't want to pay up that much either. But I think people will. It really restricts what you can do. And like if we talk about defenses, like I think the Rams defense and the Chargers defense are clearly 1-2, but they're also expensive. Like I have more Texans defense than I have of everything. I'm not really concerned that Clowney is out. No. I'm more concerned that Mariota can't grip a football or they're starting Blaine Gabbert and they have no offensive line.
Yeah, no offensive line, possibly Blaine Gabbert. That seems like a recipe for disaster. Like you said, I think I would value missing tackles more than missing a defensive end. I think a defensive end can step in and take advantage of a situation where the tackles are hurt better than a backup tackle would be like, oh, I don't have to face JJ and Clowney. Fantastic. It helps, obviously, but I think the Texans, who, by the way, still have JJ Watt healthy, I think he'll do just fine in this situation.
He'll be fine?
Yeah, I think Texans defense is in a great spot.
If you had to pay up at running back, would you pay for Gurley or Kamara?
Gurley.
I pay for Gurley too. And I'd pair him with the Rams D if that was the case. If I was using Kamara, I would pair him with the Saints D. You can use a bunch of Cleveland players. That doesn't mean that they can't score and the Saints D doesn't score too.
There's the sneaky running back DST stack of McCaffrey and the Panthers, with McCaffrey possibly also returning punts in this game now.
I'll get the double dip.
Dub points.
Are we going to get Cleveland's D and Jarvis Landry returning punts?
Nah.
Steelers D and Antonio Brown returning punts?
Does he still return punts?
Yeah.
That sounds like a real bad idea.
Tyreek Hill and Chiefs D returning punts?
I have a lot of Tyreek Hill.
I have Tyreek Hill as well. So at receiver, Jarvis Landry is the lock and load type guy?
I think
for safety purposes?
I think we've talked about Quincy Enunwa quite a bit, or we did on the show
I like
today.
Funches better than I like Enunwa.
I agree with you. And I think at the similar price point, so many people are going to be on. So many people are going on Quincy because that was a primetime game. But at the same time, there's a very strong narrative surrounding the Panthers right now. I think a lot of people can put 2 and 2 together about Funches getting a larger volume share in this offense with no Greg Olsen. So would you say that Enunwa's going to be more heavily owned, or do you think it's...
Yes, I think Enunwa will be like head and shoulders more heavily owned.
Then I would definitely pivot off of that, because even if you want to downplay Jermaine Kearse's value in this offense, let's just say he gets 4 targets. That's probably 2 targets that Robbie Anderson doesn't get and 2 targets that Quincy Enunwa doesn't get. And considering that Enunwa, unless he scores a touchdown, I mean, we're talking about an ADOT of maybe 8 yards. He's the safety valve. So he needs the volume. He's like Jarvis Landry. So if he doesn't see at least 8 targets, he's probably not going to bring back that value.
All right, let's hit up a few questions here before we check it back to Boston. Christopher English asks, bench Rodgers this week? Think he might get hurt more in this game?
Well, depends who your backup is.
It's Trubisky. I would play Aaron Rodgers.
I would play Aaron Rodgers as well.
Chris Godwin or Randall Cobb? Randall Cobb for me.
Yep. Especially with GDAC.
Let's see. Pick 3 of these 4. Kenny Stills, Larry Fitzgerald, Quincy Enunwa, and Dante Pettis. I play Stills, Fitzgerald, and Enunwa.
Yeah, you know,
I do like Pettis.
I would have said Pettis before Mr. Parker was ruled inactive, but now you have to play Stills.
This guy says Fournette or Thompson. I think I play the guy who's playing. I'll go with Chris Thompson.
Yeah, I'm going to say Chris Thompson too. Does not look positive.
Oh, we got one more here. Dustin Taylor asks, a running back 2 and a flex between Burkhead, Barber, Carson, and Clement. Out of those 4, which running back would you play? Probably Peyton Barber.
Yeah.
Peyton Barber. And then I would play Kenny Stills.
Yes.
I like Galladay, but now that Parker's not playing, play Stills.
Again, now that Stills is a fringe, for me, and I'm not very high on Stills, he's a fringe top 30 wide receiver without Devontae Parker.
Gary and Thorne coming up later on the sweat. You'll be here. This is the end of me, though.
Talking to voids.
Yeah. You're
guys,
talking.
Zach, not in the lineups.
You're talking about guys not to play this week?
Yeah.
I mean, you probably just listen to who I said to play, pick those guys, and you'll probably, based on track record,
fade Pat strategy?
Yeah,
that's
fade
not a
Pat
bad strategy.
is the move here. But Gary's coming up a little bit later on the sweat. That will be the end for me. I'll be monitoring Twitter. My rankings are all updated on DK Playbook right now. Even with all the inactives and actives, it's all up to date. So go check those out if you have start-sit questions. Anyway, we're going back to the studio in Boston. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Both Pat and Gary, and by the way, must follows on Twitter, especially on these big Sundays. A real quick update for all you Leonard Fournette owners out there. He remains unlikely to play. He's going to be testing his hamstring here in the next few minutes. Hit 17 to 18 miles per hour running this week. While he did feel a little grab in his hamstring, this is according to Chris Mortensen. I'm not on the field. If he feels it again, though, in this workout when he's about to test the hamstring, he will be out as expected. But if you're wondering what's up with the Papa John's DraftKings team pick 'em rather, well, you're in luck.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Brendan Glasheen alongside DK Live's Adam Levitan and Reed Fowler. We're here to help you out, make your draft picks for this week's DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. Targeting 3 games with interesting storylines, fellas. First up, Eagles, Buccaneers, 2 1-0 teams squaring off in Tampa. Levy, Bucs dropped 48 on the Saints last week. Does the Fitz magic continue against the defending champs?
Now, that would surprise me. I think we're going to look back at that game, that Week 1 game in New Orleans, as an outlier for a couple of reasons. First of all, Ryan Fitzpatrick's performance, and also kind of an outlier bad performance by the Saints defense. But regardless, now comes a much, much stiffer test, a test against one of the league's best defenses, who has had 10 days to prepare for this Bucs team. So I think the Eagles come out, Nick Foles plays better, they rely on Jai more, and they go ahead and get a road win.
Reed, Foles and the Eagles producing more points this week?
I think if Tampa Bay is essentially a sieve on defense like they were last week, yeah. But, I mean, you still have – I mean, Hargraves is questionable, and you still have Grimes, who potentially might be out this week as well. So that secondary does scare me. But Foles and these guys, they have to move the ball. They're also dealing with injuries as well. So for me, Philly does come in. Levy's right. These guys got 10 days to prepare. And with that stout defense up front, you would think that Fitzpatrick would go to some of his secondary receivers like he did with Jackson and Godwin. So I think Philly still ekes it out, but remains to be seen.
Moving on, 1-0 Patriots, 1-0 Jaguars. It's a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. Reed, the Pats in for a tough one in Jacksonville?
Sure, I think so. I mean, Jacksonville still has a good defense. They do have some holes, right? I think Belichick is the best at finding out what your weakness is on D and then exploiting what, taking away your best option on offense. And if you look at Jacksonville's defense, their running defense is still something that remains to be seen, that is suspect to giving up a lot of yards. We saw it with Saquon Barkley. So you do look at a guy like Rex Burkhead, who could potentially come in, especially if Sony Michel and some of these guys like Jeremy Hill are still banged up. Look for Burkhead to get those carries. But you never know, right? So I do think that they're in for a tough test. I think Jacksonville does eke this out. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting one.
Levy, did the Jags get it done in their home opener?
Oh, yeah. I think the Jags win this game, and maybe win it pretty easily. We saw in the AFC Championship game last year, the Jags had their foot on the throat, and the Patriots couldn't finish it off. But this time around, they get them at home in Jacksonville. And yeah, I think one of the reasons the Patriots have been so dominant is we see them just beat up on the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets so many times. I think it's a different task when you go up against the class of the AFC. We don't see the Patriots do that all that often. So, yeah, I like the Jaguars here.
Last one, NFC East rivalry game. Giants and Cowboys, Sunday Night Football. Levy, who's got the edge to win their first game?
Yeah, this Cowboys team has a chance to be really, really bad, I think. When you rely so much on the offensive line and you say we're going to build our entire team around the offensive line, and then all of a sudden your offensive line isn't that good anymore, well, you have big problems. I mean, they have holes on every single level on both sides of the ball. They're just a really, really bad team outside of the offensive line, and with their injuries and ways some guys are playing, they don't even have a good offensive line right now. So I think the Cowboys have a legit chance to be one of the worst teams in the league this year.
Reed, where are you leaning? G-Men or the boys in Jerry World?
Yeah, you got to go with the G-Men here. Levy's right. I mean, this team has a chance to be very, very bad. You look on Twitter, Des Bryant says, nah, I'm good, right? I'm staying away. And Cole Beasley is your red zone option. You do think that Zeke is, sort of game flow proof, or even if they're losing, he's going to be in there. So if you want to target someone even in garbage time, whatever have you, it's going to be Zeke. But yeah, the G-Men have this. They're looking good. Eli's still suspect. It's still game 1, week 1. So we'll see what he does. But the Giants are going to win this one.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. That'll do it for this week's edition of Make Your Pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. For Reed and Levy, I'm Brendan. Come back and pick 'em next week.
All right, to the telly we go. Warren Sharp of sharpfootballanalysis.com delivered one of the more and most in-depth 2018 season previews mankind has ever seen. Absolutely love the way he views these games and matchups. Warren, thanks for joining us. Please explain how predictive analytics help you make DFS decisions.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's very much matchup based still, which is what a lot of other people do. But being able to figure out using a lot of tape and watching the games and coupling that with the analytics and more advanced information, not just, yards per play or targets, but looking at success rates, looking at matchups, looking at explosive play rates, and just a variety of different metrics is what it takes to have a lot of success, in my opinion. Playing DFS or betting on sports, I think everything, you have to be a step above your competition, and you have to be looking in areas that they may not be looking to come up with decisions that are a little bit contrarian that will give you a better advantage. So that's definitely something that I spend a lot of time doing.
Now, Warren, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, and Tyreek Hill are all in good spots today. Try to find value here. What data can you give us to help everybody at home decide who they should pay up for?
Well, it's difficult. I really like DeAndre Hopkins in his matchup today. Look, I am not a big fan of the Tennessee Titans. I think everybody's going to be on AB. DeAndre Hopkins was a question mark, I think, for a little while this week heading into the game. And now he has Will Fuller there as well, which I think will only raise the ceiling on DeAndre because that's going to attract some attention from Tennessee. And even though the jury's still out on Marcus Mariota, I think this is pretty fascinating what we're seeing here in the marketplace, because in this game, Houston is currently favored by 3 to 3.5. You can get 3 minus 20 on juice. And that game didn't even go off the board when Marcus Mariota was announced that he may not play, which tells you how little Las Vegas respects Marcus Mariota's performance right now. I mean, typically, if a starting quarterback is questionable for a game or may not go or might have some sort of hand injury that's going to impact him, that game comes off the board until it's figured out what his status is. So the fact that game never came off the board and then really only shifted a little bit towards Houston, about a point to a point and a half, really tells you that the jury is out on Marcus Mariota. They don't really think very highly of him, and I concur with that. But there's going to be a big problem with that offensive line for the Tennessee Titans. If Mariota plays, how effective is he going to be? What will the status be of his backup, Gabbert? So I think the Houston Texans are in a very good situation here offensively, and I could see them being productive in the passing game.
Warren, what would you look for when you are researching a guy with seemingly little to go on, like Pat Mahomes, for example?
Well, I want to, first and foremost, I'm going to study what his OC is doing. So Andy Reid is brilliant with the play calling there. So I want to look at what the history has been with him. I want to look at what he's typically done against a common opponent, so what Andy Reid has been able to do against a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, which obviously he struggled in the past playing against the Steelers. But this defense is, I think, far worse this year than what they've been in the past. So those are a couple of layers that you're going to add in addition to all the standard analysis that you're going to look at, which it relates to just, the situation that he's in, the opponent, the matchups with the receivers, individual and as a unit, the explosive play rates. Look, Mahomes really wasn't all that efficient last week. His completion rate wasn't all that high, but they were hitting on those big plays. I can tell you that the Pittsburgh Steelers at -4 was an extremely sharp side from professional sports bettors. So they're not quite as high on Mahomes, but in a way that's a good thing because for fantasy, because the Steelers may be playing with a lead, forcing Mahomes to throw the football a little bit more often. So those are just a couple of things that I would look at if you're trying to research somebody with a very small sample size.
So based off your data this week, give us a few guys who stood out to you and then sort of explain to us why.
One guy that stood out in particular was Zach Ertz. And, everybody's down on Nick Foles. And Nick Foles really hasn't given him a good reason to feel otherwise. But there's some definite edges here in this matchup. First of all, if you look at what they did last week, everybody's not going to love what Zach Ertz delivered last week against the Atlanta Falcons. But the Atlanta Falcons last year were the 5th best in regards to completion rate to tight ends and the 5th best in regards to yards per attempt to tight ends. Last season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were one of the worst teams in the NFL. They allowed 71% completions to tight ends. That was the 2nd worst in the NFL, ahead of only the Browns. And they allowed an early down completion rate of 79%. That was the worst in the NFL to tight ends, as well as 7.3 yards per attempt and a 58% success rate. I think the way that this Philadelphia offense operates, when they get Nick Foles gets going, when he has some success down the field, particularly to Zach Ertz. If you look at what they did last year, their downfield target the only guy that had 7 or more yards per attempt that was a receiver was Alshon Jeffrey, averaged 8.2 yards per attempt on his downfield targets from week 15 onwards when Nick Foles was the starting quarterback. And so the other guys like Nelson Aguilar and Torrey Smith, they only averaged 6.5 and 6.7 yards per attempt respectively. Zach Ertz averaged 7.8. He's the closest guy that they have to Alshon Jeffrey. If they don't have Jeffrey in there, they need Zach Ertz to be a more deeper weapon down the field. The fact that he delivered a extremely high 76% completion rate from Foles tells you that they have a good connection. But because of that strong defense last week against the Falcons, it was a problem. So that guy, spending a little bit more time discussing him, I'm really high on his matchup this week. I think that game is going to be higher scoring than what was expected. That game, I'll actually share with you because the lines moved so much. That game was sitting at 44 in terms of the total. Last night, I put out the over to my clients at 44. And right now, this game is sitting at 46.5. It moved in less than 12 hours, upwards as high as 47 points. And now it's back down to 46.5. So we got some really good line movement on the over that I recommended. And so I think we're going to see a lot of production from Zach Ertz, even though people are scared of Nick Foles.
Hey, Warren, really good stuff. It was awesome having you on. We appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, now to the gifts that just keep on giving. That would be Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. Guys, before you give us your anchors, a couple of Facebook questions real quick for cash games here. AB and Gurley or AB and Hopkins, Reed?
Well, I mean, potentially it depends on where you're paying up for. I mean, I like that AB Gurley. I mean, you're talking about some of the best guys in the game. I mean,
yep.
Gurley looks to have a huge game against Arizona, the most implied game total. So if I had to, I would go in that spot, especially if you get Gurley at depressed ownership. So yeah, I would go AB Gurley.
Jeff, flex, Carlos Hyde or Crowder?
I don't like either of those guys, but if I go, I'd go Hyde. I don't mind Hyde for tournaments, I guess. I think it's kind of a sneaky spot, but yeah, I'd go Hyde.
And then one more for you, PPR, Golden Tate or Devontae Adams?
Golden Tate for sure. It's a much better matchup. Devontae Adams has a terrible matchup and isn't 100%. Golden Tate.
All right, good stuff. Let's go to anchors now. Reed, give me a guy. Give me someone you're anchoring.
Yeah, it's Melvin Gordon. I think we've touched on him a couple of points in this show. This guy should be in line for a great week, or excuse me, a great day on Sunday. Look, you're playing against Buffalo. He saw 13 targets against the Chiefs, which again it eclipsed his production or even his target share last year by quite some amount. So I got him in this spot for at least 21 to 22 touches. Buffalo is extremely bad, like 24 touches of a possible 36. That was third last week. So give me Melvin Gordon going up against a Buffalo team that's really, really bad.
Who do you like, Jeff?
I like Christian McCaffrey. I'm not quite as high on Melvin Gordon this week as Reed. The Chargers going across country scares me a little bit. I know the Bills are bad, but it is a bounce back spot for them. Christian McCaffrey is just going to get a ton of usage today. He might even return kicks, punts. He's going to get a ton of work in the pass game. Greg Olsen, Atlanta's horrible defending the running back position. Love the spot for Christian McCaffrey. I wouldn't be shocked if he outscores Alvin Kamara today, and I just look at him at 7K as too big a discount to turn down.
Jeff, hit us with another anchor selection, please.
Yeah, my second one, more of a value play, we talked about him already, is Randall Cobb. With the Aaron Rodgers news, again, you look at the matchup with Minnesota and Green Bay. Xavier Rhodes is going to be on Devontae Adams. The other side, Geronimo Allison, I just don't really have that much interest in. Randall Cobb's going to be in the slot, and Aaron Rodgers is going to have to get rid of this ball quickly in this game. He's not going to be wanting to stay in there and take a bunch of hits. Randall Cobb is probably going to see, I wouldn't be shocked if he sees 10-plus targets again. I think this is way too cheap for him right now. He played great in the first game, looked great. He might be returning kicks too. 4,600, it's a little bit of a risk if Rodgers has to come out because, Kaiser's such a downgrade, but I still like this price.
Reed, anchor number 2,
Yeah,
please.
it's going to be. Yeah, next one's going to be Hopkins. I think Warren just talked about it. I mean, if you can get this guy at 8 to 10%, which is wild, Tennessee's defense and Tennessee's offense, the entire team looks like they're a little bit banged up. But Tennessee's defense doesn't scare me. We saw Kenny Stills go off for 4 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 100-plus yards. I know that game was kind of crazy, so you can't glean too much from it. But Hopkins did this last year too when he faced the Patriots before Tennessee. Kind of had the same line as he did last year. He had about 7 catches, 76 yards this year against the Patriots, and then he went off last year against Tennessee for around the same that Kenny Stills did. So again, Kenny Stills is not Hopkins, but Hopkins should be in line for a huge game. So he's my next one, especially if you can get him at single-digit ownership.
Reed, your third anchor, I'm a massive fan of.
Yeah, it's Tevin Coleman. We talked about him. I mean, at that price, you got to anchor him in your lineup. It gives you relief to a bunch of different places. If you want to pay up for that stack that was earlier alluded to, we want to pay up for some high-priced receivers, all in good spots. If you want to get that Keenan Allen stack with Gordon, what have you, or Rivers and Keenan Allen stack, you can pay down at running back. There are some values due to injuries that have come out. So Tevin Coleman can come in with a big game with big production at that 5,300 price tag.
Jeff, anchor down for me, third and final time.
Look, Tevin Coleman's a great play. I mean, he's going to be in the workhorse role, but there's a player $100 above him that no one is talking about, and they should be. Everyone loves the Houston defense this week. Usually when we like a defense, it's a really good play to correlate the running back with the defense. Well, Lamar Miller is in a 3-down role. He's averaged over 80 yards on the ground with Deshaun Watson as quarterback, and everyone is saying, oh, Tennessee's a dead fish. I love this play for tournaments. He's going to be way lesser owned than Tevin Coleman. So give me some Lamar Miller at 5,400. Pair him with the Houston D. Love that stack this week.
Hey, Jeff, best quarterback wide receiver stack in the 1 p.m. early slate. One of the questions we have on Facebook.
Oh, you asking me slate specific questions now? Oh.
Hey man, hey, it's a curveball. I mean, read if you.
Yeah, I actually like more of the later stacks.
Okay.
I think for chalk, I mean, you can just go to Tyreek, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, if you're looking for something a little bit lesser owned, I mean, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins is fine. You could even throw Lamar Miller in with those three. I mean, Lamar Miller is a fine pass catcher if you're just looking for like a Houston domination stack. So that's probably where I would go for a lesser owned one.
Reed, best RB to start in the New England-Jacksonville matchup. Don't answer this one carefully.
Is this an Emerson-related question? No.
Is this Emerson? Is this Emerson?
It's my burner account.
Oh my gosh, your burner account. It's all over the comments.
For each team, I would go James White, New England, and then TJ Yeldon on Jacksonville's side. But if I choose one from both teams, it'd be Yeldon.
All right.
All right, thanks, guys. Your off-the-wall selections are coming up soon. As for your Roman Health $1 million picks, here you go. Welcome to $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. I'm Adam Kaufman, and look, we all know when you're trying to win it all, you need to separate yourself from the crowd. So let's identify some of the diamonds in the rough. Players with major upside. Adam Levitan and Pat Mayo are here, our $1 million panel. Levy, who do you think can have a $1 million impact this weekend? Give me one or two guys.
Yeah, I think one place to look for good low-owned plays people don't want to click on is guys who played bad in week one. And I think we can explain why Jimmy Garoppolo played poorly in week one, going on the road to Minnesota. I'm not sure people are giving enough credit to this Minnesota defense, which was just behind Jacksonville last year in terms of pass defense in almost every category. And almost,
I could make an argument they got better this year. So I expected Jimmy Garoppolo to struggle. I hope this week that Marquise Goodwin is healthy for him. But either way, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo put up huge numbers at the end of last year without very many weapons. Now he gets a home game against the Lions, who I don't think have much depth on defense beyond Darius Slay. So I think Jimmy Garoppolo is in for a bounce back spot, and that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go somewhat obvious with this one, but $6,700 is still too cheap for James Conner. If it was Le'Veon Bell, no one would have a problem paying $9,000 for him. So I feel like he should still be priced up. People are hip to this, but still, James Conner and that market share and the amount of touches that he's going to get, the receiving work, the goal line work, James Conner is someone you need to plug in. Now, to save the money, there is a situation, and even keeping on that theme that Levy was talking about with San Francisco, Alfred Morris is only $3,600. Now, he's not going to be involved in the receiving game. He could lose snaps to Matt Breida, but even though he put the ball on the ground last week against the Vikings, he gets a much easier opponent in the Lions. If he can still get all that goal line work, you get the potential for 2 touchdowns at $3,600.
All right, thanks again to our $1 Million panel. Enjoy the games. We will see you next week on $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com.
Steve, Julian, Rosalie, what a pleasure it is to see all three of you again. Let's stack them up. Steve, who's your top stack today?
Doc stack for the week.
Hey, Steve, start over. We didn't have your audio in the
you.
beginning, so start over. Who's your top stack?
Take two. All right, I like Big Ben and Antonio Brown. I mean, look, it's a chalk stack for the week, but for good reason. It's expensive. It's going to run you for $15,700. But we all remember what Antonio Brown and the monster game he had against the Chiefs last year. 32.5 DK fantasy points, catching 8 of his 10 targets for 155 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs were one of the worst pass defenses in the league last season, and it doesn't look like it's improved much either. Wide receivers averaged 37.3 DK fantasy points last year, 17.8 DK fantasy points for the quarterbacks. Then it's got one of the highest over-under of the weeks. What's there to think about?
Yeah, that game's going to be insane. Rosalie, you staying in that game or are you going outside it?
I'm actually going outside it. You know, I am all over Blazin Kamara this week. They were 5th and 6th and 5th if you go in order, in overall fantasy points last week in that monster game, right? A lot of points there. Going up against Cleveland this week, you know, they just gave up 29.2 fantasy points to Connor. I see Kamara being... He had about 17, he had 17 touches last week. I think he's going to be in the early 20s in his touches and a lot of points. 475 total yards that Cleveland gave up last week to Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Breeze and Kamara are going to have monster games today.
Julian, this is your time to shine. You are Julian the Stack Edlow, so let's hear it.
It is my time to shine, Emerson. Thank you for that. But I think both of those are going to be really popular stacks, really high owned stacks, and I think this one will be as well, sticking with that Steelers game, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I do think Roethlisberger and AB will be a little bit higher owned, so you can kind of pivot off and go with this. You'll save some salary. We saw last week that these two can combine for like 75 DK points, so there's a lot to like there. And I'll just throw this at you. If you want to stack this game in full, obviously you can't do that on a regular slate. If you play in the tiers slate, you can get Big Ben and Mahomes and AB and Tyreek Hill and just go all out on this game.
Oh, nice, dude.
So nice, Julian. We want you to do it twice. Please hit us with another stack.
All right. Well, this stack I like a little bit more, and we kind of just talked about this game, the Houston Tennessee game, that nobody really seems to be talking about Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins as much. Watson's coming off a really bad game at New England, but like this Tennessee team, he torched them last season for 57 points and 4 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins, everybody seems to be down on him, but he did catch 8 of 11 targets last week. And this Titans defense, to the wide receiver 1 of the Dolphins, Kenny Stills, 4 catches for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. I think Watson and Hopkins is going to be a terrific stack this week for the Texans.
Rosalie, what's the second stack that you're looking at?
Yeah, I like the Watson and Hopkins thing, and I hope that he does have a great bounce back game. But I went Rivers and Allen here, Keenan Allen here. I mean, 541 total yards that the Chargers had last week versus the Chiefs. Buffalo gave up 26.6 QB fantasy points and 31.7 wide receiver fantasy points last week to Baltimore. That Buffalo team is just so bad. I think the time of possession is really going to be in the Chargers' favor. And yeah, we'll probably see a little bit more Melvin Gordon, but Keenan Allen had 11 targets last week, so you can't deny that connection and how well they're doing. So I like Rivers and Allen.
Steve, stack it.
Yeah, those were all nice and everything, but I got the top number 2 stack for you right here. Case Keenum and Emmanuel Sanders. Look, the stack is on the cheaper side, 12,000 in total. Did we all forget that Keenum hooked up with Sanders 10 times last week? 135 receiving yards with a touchdown for 32.5 DK fantasy points. Sanders has an excellent matchup against Leon Hall in the slot. Hall allowed 69% catch rate and coverage last season. Receivers averaging 16 yards per catch on Hall. Look, the Raiders aren't a daunting matchup by any means. We're going to be talking about going against them all season long. So we'll get used to it. We're only in week 2. This is a really solid matchup. It's a cheap one to focus on today, and one that's not really get talked about a lot. And these two hooked up so well last week. You got to love that one.
We like a productive, cheap stack. That's good stuff. You got a third one for us, Rosalie?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, I've been a big Case Keenum fan, so I agree with him there. But I went Cousins and Thielen here. You know what? 12 targets last week. Green Bay gave up a lot of fantasy points last week to Chicago. I like Cousins and Thielen. I'm not sure what's going on with him and Diggs, but he definitely trusts Thielen in all those targets. So I like Cousins and Thielen here with a lot of points from Green Bay. And I think the time of possession is going to go in Minnesota's favor here.
Where else you going for your third stack, Julian?
Yeah, well, we definitely don't need to have quarterbacks in your stacks, and that's why I'm going Melvin Gordon and the Chargers defense here. I know off the top of the show we were going to talk about, do we have to pay up at defense or down?
Yeah.
With this Mariota news and the Texans defense looking so good, I think a lot of people are now going to be paying down at defense, which can get us lower ownership on the Chargers defense, which we just saw what the Ravens did to the Bills in week 1. Melvin Gordon didn't score a touchdown, didn't even run all that well against the Chiefs last week, still topped 30 DraftKings points. So if this one's anywhere close, you're going to get a really good correlation between Melvin Gordon and the Chargers defense. And for those of you, like how Jeff said, Jeff didn't say that, but if you think this game's going to get too out of hand, I know Jeff said that I don't want to put words in Jeff's mouth. Jeff said that he doesn't like Melvin Gordon as much coming east. But for those of you that do think that this game could get too out of hand, then pay down and get Austin Eckler, who had a really good week last week at 4,400 with the Chargers fee, and now you're looking really different.
Steve, hit us with number 3 real quick.
Yeah, Alex Smith and Chris Thompson, I mean, they combined, this stack only cost you $11,000. Thompson had 7 targets last week, made 6 catches with 63 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he should get all that work. Adrian Peterson doesn't catch anything except some bad press every once in a while. And look, the matchup against the Colts is fantastic. I don't think this is one that's been talked about much at all. The Chiefs are looking to do a lot of short passes, which obviously benefits Alex Smith here. Smith rushed 8 times last week, but for only for 14 yards. But if he gets that amount of targets, because Peterson doesn't catch anything, I think he's a good play there.
All right, thanks, guys. Time for some B-dubs of Blazin' Picks.
Pat Mayo here with Sunday's Blazin' Game Day Picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. First up, if we didn't get a chance to use them last Sunday, it's time to dial up some Todd Gurley in week 2, because the spot is perfect. Gurley's the best running back in fantasy. The Rams are massive home favorites, and the Cardinals defense just got destroyed by 67-year-old Adrian Peterson. Just imagine what Gurley's going to do to them. At receiver, look for a bounce back from DeAndre Hopkins. A bounce back from a game where he still hauled in 8 receptions for 78 yards. This is what qualifies as a down game for Hopkins. If that wasn't reason enough, Hopkins earned close to a 40% market share of the Texans' targets, and now gets a Tennessee secondary who couldn't stop Penny Stills. DeAndre Hopkins, get him in. Finally, turn to Patrick Mahomes as your pivot. We saw his fantasy upside unleashed against the Chargers, and he didn't even get Travis Kelce involved. Plus, with the Steelers back at home in non-monsoon conditions, expect a more consistent performance from their offense. They'll score enough points to keep Mahomes chucking this entire game. Those were your Blazin' Game Day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
All right, guys, a few updates for you. It's being reported that Marcus Mariota is on the field right now.
Warming up.
He is warming up, which, give me Marcus Mariota over Blaine Gabbert any day of the week. As for the Patriots, rookie running back Sony Michel is going to suit up. He's going to play. He's going to make his NFL debut. Rex Burkhead is also going to play. For all you wide receiver owners out there who have Devontae Parker with Miami, it looked like he was going to start, but he is not. Again, big for any of you Kenny Stills fans. And then, everyone keep an eye on Leonard Fournette and the Jaguars in that big game against the Patriots today. Michael DeRico of ESPN, Jaguars reporter, just saw Leonard Fournette jogging out to the players' parking lot. No wrap on his injured right hamstring. Do what you will with that information, but those are some of the big ones. Oh, and Aaron Rodgers as well.
Yeah, apparently he's out there with a huge brace on his knee. So
he needs it right now because he's basically just playing on one leg, which he was pretty good at.
He can do it. He can do it.
All right, let's welcome back in Steve Buchanan and Julian Edlow. Gentlemen, it's time for Julian's absolute favorite segment on this program.
Yeah, it's Put Up Your Bukes, loved by all, hated by none, allegedly the highest rated segment on this show. Steve, give us your 3 picks for the night along with DK point projections, and Julian is going to fight you on them.
Yeah, I like that Julian got all dolled up for this segment, so thank you, Julian. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. We're going to start with Nelson Aguilar, 20 DK fantasy points, 6,100. Look, if someone's going to receive 10 targets, the production's going to come around at some point. Aguilar is working as the Eagles wide receiver 1 with Alshon Jeffrey out of the mix currently. He's facing the Bucs. I mean, this defense allowed a league-leading 38.5 DK fantasy points to wide receivers last year. They faced the Saints last week. Guess what? More of the same. 31.6 DK fantasy points to those wide receivers here, so we definitely don't have to worry about that. Look, Nick Foles doesn't make me feeling all warm and fuzzy. This isn't the Super Bowl anymore. This is the same old Nick Foles. But look, you know what? Like I said, Aguilar, if he's going to get that type of production, if Foles is going to lean on him that much, got to get him in there.
Julian, he's $6,100. Is he going to get 20 DK fantasy points?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't fight Steve on this one. I do, however, think we have to drop the hated by none opening to this segment after the Sam Bradford pick last week.
Okay.
That should be on. Prove himself a little bit more. But Aguilar is a nice pick here. I think he has a good one this week in his leadoff pick. He had 13.5 DK points last week. He caught 8 of 10 targets. It was only for 33 yards, but you love the involvement. He also got a 9th touch, a running attempt out of the backfield. People want to talk about the Bucs beating the Saints, but they forget that the Saints still put up 40 points in that game. It's going to be very easy to throw on this Bucs defense, and for now, Nelson Aguilar is still that #1 receiver. So if he gets a touchdown on top of that game he had last week, he's going to be right around 20 points, and I think that's where he'll be this week.
Steve, I think we might have to change our intro to your segment.
Sorry, dude.
Really
Julian's
sorry.
demands.
Yeah, Julian said it, so we kind of have to listen. What about your second pick?
You know what losers do? They praise other people's failures because they don't have any achievements of their own. So that's exactly what Julian is. One bad pick by me, and that's all he harps about. So we're going to go with Chris Godwin for 4,616 DK fantasy points. The news that Deshaun Jackson is in kind of dings Godwin here, but I think he can still be productive. I think he's actually a really good pivot play off of Quincy Enunwa over at the Jets, who's going to see really high ownership today. Godwin scored 13.1 DK fantasy points on 4 targets last week and a touchdown. It's not like the Eagles don't give up yards to opposing wide receivers. They averaged 155 per game last year. I think he's still in play here. I think he's going to see a drop in ownership because Deshaun Jackson is in. I think that news definitely hurt him, but definitely in tournaments, I'm absolutely still going to go for him.
Yeah, Julian Jackson, of course, like we're hearing, is in, but do you still think that Godwin's a good play? I mean, he had 41 yards and a score in week 1.
Yeah, a good pivot play off Quincy Enunwa would be Devin Funches or Kenny Golladay, not Chris Godwin, because he is not in a spot to succeed here. He's no longer going against the Saints in the Superdome. I don't like this matchup against the Eagles. Deshaun Jackson is healthy and expected to play in this one, and Jackson only played in 30% of the snaps last week. He was on the field for 20 snaps, whereas Godwin played 70. With a healthy Deshaun Jackson, we're not going to see those numbers anymore. And although Godwin got into the end zone, he was still only targeted 4 times. So his day was saved by that touchdown. If he doesn't score this week and gets maybe 3 targets with Jackson seeing a full workload, 4 targets, I don't think that he's got the type of upside against a much better Eagles defense than the Saints to succeed here.
Okay, so we're getting some pushback on your second pick, Steve. What about your third?
hardly pushback. Have fun with Funches and that pace of play with that game. Danny Amendola, 4,600 for 14 DK fantasy points. He's going to see almost no ownership at all, and he gets a great matchup in the slot. He'll match up against Buster Screen. Screen allowed 62% reception rate on 96 targets last year, 11.6 yards per reception, and 6 touchdowns allowed. Look, there's no Parker, baby, so Amendola, let's go. He's cheap. He should see maybe around 5 to 6 targets like he did last week. I'm telling you, his ownership is going to be so low. I love Amendola here as a GPP play by far.
Julian, Amendola, what do you think? 14 DK fantasy points?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason Amendola's ownership is going to be so low. He played without Parker last week. He saw 6 targets. He caught 4 of them for 26 yards. That's 6.6 DraftKings points. He's got the same situation this week. I see no reason to roster him. Here we are sitting again at that 4,600 price point as we were with Chris Godwin. I didn't only mention Devin Funches. How about Kenny Golladay at 4,800? There's way better plays in this price range, whether it's at wide receiver or the flex spot. So Godwin, Amendola, you can have those guys. I'll take a bunch of other plays in this price range.
Yeah, you still don't have your own segment, though.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks, Steve. Julian, thanks for joining us for your favorite segment. Now let's welcome in Gary and Thorne and Jeff Ulrich to play Thorne in My Side.
All right, Gary, give us 3 guys you're fading, 3 guys you absolutely hate on today's slate, and we'll let Jeff chime in with his doubts. Give us that first Thorne.
Oh, well, it's interesting. I think Jeff might actually tail me on this one because we had a similar thought process on Lamar Miller. I'm not really using Tevin Coleman anywhere outside of cash games. I just don't think he's a viable play in a GPP. Everyone is going to be on this guy. He's going to be the highest owned running back of the week. And you look at the other guys in this tier, like Lamar Miller, like TJ Yeldon, if we find out that Leonard Fournette is not going to play in this contest, and that's what your flex spot is for. I just don't think I'm going to have any Coleman. We saw this play out last week with Ezekiel Elliott, who, if he didn't have a late touchdown, really would have had a horrendous week against the Carolina Panthers. They have gone 21 consecutive weeks without allowing a running back to go over 100 yards. I know this seems like the James Conner play from last week. It's not. I just, even if he gets 20 touches, which he might, and that's why he's a cash game play, the ownership is going to be way too high for me to use him in a GPP.
Jeff, remind us again how much you like Coleman.
I just want to say it's a pleasure to be working with another smart, good-looking Canadian like myself. So not shocked to hear that I do agree with this 100%. I think Lamar Miller is such a good swerve play at that price. Tevin Coleman, just insane ownership for GPPs. And again, Gary said it. You can lock him in cash games. That's fine. The touches are there. He's only 5,300. I think the upside with Miller is better. The ownership is going to be possibly way less than half. So makes no sense to me not to swerve to Lamar Miller in that spot. Tevin Coleman's a great player. I like him. Matchup is brutal. Luke Kuechly is very tough on opposing running backs. I would be fine fading him in tournaments.
All right, you're fading a running back next.
Yeah, let's talk about Matt Breida. I won't deny this is a good spot against the Lions, but I just have so much faith in Alfred Morris, which scares me a little bit. Like, look, I'm not.
Didn't he fumble last week though? Like right at the goal line, kind of looked a little rough.
Did fumble a couple times, yeah, at the goal line. But the point is, he got the goal line carries. Actually leads the NFL right now in carries inside the 5-yard line with 3. I look at the possible game script for this contest, and I feel like at that price point, at 3.6, if he scores a touchdown, there's no way he's not hitting value, and he's going to be the guy who gets the opportunities above Matt Breida to do just that. I know we're playing full point PPR here, but I think with the price discrepancy between those 2 guys, I've got a lot of Morris in my lineups. I don't have any Breida.
How much Breida do you have in your lineups, Jeff?
I have a little bit, not much, because I was in on him last week, and he really just did not perform. You know, with Matt Breida, you're expecting him to take a PPR role, and he really didn't. He had 2 targets last week. Now, that might increase because it's Detroit, so I'm not off him 100%, but I do agree. The price discrepancy is so big. I mean, Alfred Morris is probably going to get half the snaps, and even if he catches like 1 pass, he's probably going to get the goal lines, and he's so much cheaper. So the matchup is better for Alfred Morris. I can't disagree. I think the play might be just to stay away, but if you were going to take a shot with one, going with Alfred Morris is probably the better bet.
Your third Thorne's interesting because Devontae Parker's not playing, but
a lot of people high this guy.
But please explain why you're not playing Kenny Stills.
I will admit, I submitted these when the entire fantasy football community was under the impression that Devontae Parker was going to play, but I'll still stand by this. I'm just not that high on Kenny Stills, and I think the fact that he caught 2 touchdowns is really like the perfect storm for this particular situation. I mean, he only had 5 targets in that game against the Titans. And this is someone who, generally speaking, is not targeted in the red zone. I realize it was a separate quarterback last season, but same coaching staff. Stills finished 2017 with 4 red zone targets. So already got 25% of his last season's total in 1 week. And that's the thing. He scored on his 1 red zone target, then caught a 75-yard fourth quarter touchdown. These just aren't sustainable things. And there's a reason that Steve can bring up Danny Amendola as a possible value play. There's a reason that like Mike Gesicki could sometimes be a weird value play at tight end. There's just so many average to below average mouths to feed in this Dolphins offense. I just don't feel like Stills, even as the de facto wide receiver 1, is ever going to see a target share above like 20%. And even that seems high.
Jeff, what do you think? 5,700? I mean, he's going to be the #1 wide receiver there for Miami today against the Jets.
Look, they're never going to pair me with Gary Niang because I'm just going to agree with them constantly, apparently. So, look, the week to buy on Kenny Stills was last week when he was 4,700, not this week when he's 1,000 more. And he's actually in a bit of a tougher matchup. The Jets improved their secondary over the offseason. It's not that great a matchup. The target share isn't huge. You're relying on a big play. Kenny Stills caught one. I don't want to say it was lucky, but it was a little bit of a lucky play last week to go for 75 yards and a touchdown. I just don't see the point in paying up for him here. You can get up to Nelson Aguilar. You can get up to Brandon Cooks. There's much better value below Kenny Stills. I think people are just chasing points here. It's such a big price increase. No thanks.
All right, let's roll through a couple questions on Facebook real quick. PPR League, Kenny Stills or Marshawn Lynch?
Yeah.
Jeff, I know.
I guess Lynch by default because I just finished, destroying Stills, but I don't really love either of those guys.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Gary and DeAndre Hopkins or Antonio Brown? Tough call.
Well, on DraftKings, I would go with Hopkins. You're just going to see so much lower ownership in a season long. Congratulations, you're winning your championship.
Nice.
Jeff, Peterson or Hilton in the flex? I had to ask you with Peterson involved.
Yeah, it's Hilton.
And then Landry or Aguilar, Garion?
Oh, it's Landry. I mean, Aguilar is a poor man's Jarvis Landry, so just go for a rich man's Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry.
Excellent, dudes. Okay, we appreciate it. Now, for all of you at home, take a listen to Adam Levitan's DFS Edge conviction plays.
Adam, give your conviction play. I'll give mine. Then we'll kick it to Al for his conviction play, and he will end the podcast. So, Adam, who is your conviction play this week?
First of all, I love that it took you literally to have an incompetent coaching staff and a horrible matchup and evidence-based in week 1.
I didn't play any of him last week either. He wasn't on the slate. I know, but even Monday night, there's only 2 games to choose from. I didn't play him.
All right. My conviction play, I'm going to go with the layup. And I don't know, maybe people out there don't think it's a layup. I can't see how it's not a layup to play James Conner, who I think the thing about the Steelers, and I talked about this on the solo pod, is when Le'Veon Bell isn't there or is hurt, they don't go to this backfield by committee nonsense. They put the backup into the Le'Veon Bell role, and James Conner is talented enough to be an 8K, 8,500 player in that role in an awesome matchup against the Chiefs. At 6,700, he's going to be massively owned, but I certainly still want James Conner. He would be the guy I have the most conviction about on this slate. And also, let me mention one more thing before we go on here. Sorry for the long conviction play, but whereas last week I think maybe James Conner's ownership was held down because there were so many guys that were mispriced by 1K, 2K, 3K. In this week where there's a fraction of that many guys who are mispriced, you need to take the value even more. Guys that are mispriced by 1 or 2K, there aren't that many of them. So when you see them, you need to actually take it, if that makes sense. Whereas last week, there were so many different ways to go. So yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, James Conner, lock button. In that same game for me, a lock button is Antonio Brown. With the discount you're getting versus Kamara and Gurley, I think he's the clear-cut top-end guy you have to jam in this week. Plays exceptional at home. This Chiefs defense is terrible. There's going to be tons of shootouts. And the one thing always to be cognizant of on DraftKings is these bonuses. Antonio Brown is basically a lock if he stays healthy to get over 100 yards. He's going to see 8 to 10 catches. I think he gets in the end zone multiple times here. So AB always balling, easy conviction play this week for me. Al, what's your conviction play and get us out of here?
Well, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. If you want to choose between Alvin Kamara and you want to choose between Todd Gurley, that's up to you. My conviction play on the week is Melvin Gordon III of the Los Angeles Chargers, playing in Buffalo, a team that we have been streaming running backs against these last 2 years, and I'm going to continue doing it here in 2018. Only 7,400 for week 2. Pair him with Adam's conviction play. You can pair him with Pete's as well and build out yourself a pretty nice lineup going from there.
Welcome back to The Sweat. Jeff Ulrich, Steve Buchanan, and Reed Fowler are with us right now to give us their off-the-wall picks. Jeff, please give us those 2 picks.
Hey, it's the return of the Mac. Marlon Mack is active. He's healthy. He practiced in full on Friday. The Colts' backfield is brutal without Marlon Mack, and I expect Frank Reich to just put him back into a workhorse role. This guy's a great PPR player. He's probably going to take the goal line carries. Christine Michael, inactive today. Give me some Marlon Mack at 4,500. There's no reason why this guy can't come in and just pick up a big role right away.
All right, return of the Mac. What about your second pick?
Second one, I'm going to running back too. Corey Clement. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about him, quite frankly. Darren Sproles is out. Corey Clement is trusted by Doug Peterson. He's going to get more targets this week because there's no Darren Sproles. And they do work him inside the red zone. Jay Ajayi is basically nothing in the pass game. Corey Clement's 3,500 in a terrific matchup. He falls into the end zone. 5 times value is definitely there. So Corey Clement, Marlon Mack, I like both those players for cheap value plays at running back.
Steven, I need a couple off-the-wall picks from you, please.
Yeah, let's just replace Jeff with all of Julian's segments. He's so much more insightful and looks better. I think we like Jeff here. I'm going to go with Dante Pettis, 4,000. Look, Marquise Goodwin has been ruled out, opening up snaps for Pettis here. He's extremely cheap, and I think realistically, you could see 5 to 7 targets in this game. He played on 72% of the snaps after Goodwin left in week 1, caught 2 passes for 61 yards. The Lions are certainly not a defense that you're worried about here, so I think he's definitely an option that's just not being talked about enough, and he's cheap enough to play.
Reed, give us those 2 off-the-wall picks.
Yeah, my first one is going to be Mike Williams out of the Chargers, $3,700 going up against Buffalo. He saw 6 targets, 5 receptions, 81 yards last week against the Chiefs. Now you're without Travis Benjamin, who saw about 48, so a little bit more snaps than Williams. Williams saw about 44. So you think in terms of those snaps and the targets, that would shift to Williams. Like he 13 point, I think 13, a little over 13 DK fantasy points last week with all of the weapons there. Buffalo secondary doesn't scare me too much. You still have some guys in Pointer and Hyde that are coverage secondary, but if Mike Williams can get in the end zone with the same line and an increased amount of targets, I do like that at 3,700. Again, paying down at receiver, you could essentially pay up in other spots. And my other one is Duke Johnson. Same thing. You look at Gordon, he's not going to be in there. Carlos Hyde, he did see a ton of touches last week, but you also saw Duke Johnson get about 44% of the snaps. He's working in that slot. The Saints are about 10-point favorites, so you think that the Browns are going to be passing a lot. Antonio Callaway, Higgins. Callaway's probably going to get Marshawn Lattimore, so that's going to be tough. He's a rookie, and I don't trust Higgins. Duke Johnson in the slot should get a lot of target share. He should be in there, too, with Duke Johnson, with Carlos Hyde, so he would be my second off-the-wall pick.
Guys, do I get to get my second one, or is just not allowed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Steve.
no, that's fine. I mean, you just stop talking. It's like this segment, you're just supposed to spit them off here, dude. We're getting close to kickoff. People don't have time for this.
Oh, okay, so then we don't want to play Ricky Seals-Jones?
We have time. Go for it.
No. Explain why.
Okay, well, first of all, he's $2,900. I mean, you can't ask for better than a $2,900 tight end, right? Look, Jared Cook just went off for 9 catches, 180 yards against the Rams. They certainly want to avoid those matchups with the cornerbacks that they have. So Seals-Jones could be a legitimate target today. He had a disappointing week 1, but he did see 6 targets in that span, only 4.9 DK fantasy points on 3 catches, but we've seen him perform before last season. Take away the name. If you told me there's a pass catcher out there that could draw 5 targets at $2,900, you'd tell me, where do I lock it in? So put him in there. And thank you for letting me take the time.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we're happy to do it. We're happy to do it. Sorry, we didn't mean to treat you like you were Julian.
Clearly not a Seal fan. Clearly not a Kiss fan.
I got your back, man. I got your back.
Yeah.
Guys, we got around 10 minutes before kickoff here, so let's go quad box. Let's hit some questions.
Box.
Yeah, I don't know who we're bringing in the quad box.
That's why we just keep saying quad box. So we're like,
I believe you 3 are sticking around, and then are we bringing in Julian?
Bring in that quad box.
It'll be a surprise.
Oh, it's all right, so we drop.
Leave voted off the island.
We drop Reed.
He's going back to the island.
We got a couple Canadians, a couple Americans here. So, gentlemen, time for working up a sweat. Like, any last-minute changes? Maybe
after the show, maybe somebody changed your mind.
Maybe. Players I guess you've been stuck on all week, but now all of a sudden you're having like a change of heart. Anyone? Gary, and I'll start with you.
Defenses, like I had some 49ers shares. I had, just some strange situations and just put it all on Texans and tried to shore up $200-300 to maybe spend elsewhere. Also, I created a new lineup. So not technically tinkering, but I wanted another lineup in a tournament with a Broncos stack. I just feel like Case Keenum's going to go significantly under-owned. Not that you can really go terribly under-owned at quarterback. There's not really chalk at quarterback, but I do really like that Broncos stack. I know Steve does too.
All right, let's stick with the Canadians. Jeff, don't freak out, but there's 10 minutes left. Are you freaking out? Are you working up a sweat over anybody? Don't panic, but panic.
I can't freak out. It's not even like
look at that face. You're panicking. Calm down, dude.
So, I mean, the biggest change for me was just seeing that Marlon Mack was healthy and active, and taking some shares of James White out because Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel both going to play. I like Mack in the spot. Like I said, he's got a better chance to see the lead role there than James White does for the Patriots. And I still don't mind James White, but I don't mind getting on some Marlon Mack. He's going to be very, very under-owned today, and I really do feel like that he's the best chance the Colts have at keeping this game close, getting him out there as much as possible. So that was kind of my shares. There was a few other running backs in that area I didn't mind, but Marlon Mack, to me, I've injected a few more shares today.
I think that's a good point that Jeff brings up about White too, is that since that information came out, people are kind of panicking and taking him out. But in a GPP, I've kept him in all my lineups here. I feel like that news, if anything, helped me now that I'm going to get a lot more, better ownership on than I was on him originally. I mean,
the way the Patriots win that game is probably throwing to their running backs a lot, and that's kind of the Jaguars' weakness. So I still don't mind James White, but I did inject a few more shares in Marlon Mack.
What's changed for you, Julian, as
freak out.
As kickoff has approached?
You guys don't freak out.
Yeah, I don't think that much has honestly changed for me today. I know one of Reed's guys, Mike Williams, does become more attractive to me because of his enhanced role. But I think the main thing, and it goes back to last night, was the Josh Gordon news. So I guess it's more of a, whatever you want to call it, 12-hour reaction. But Jarvis Landry became much more attractive to me when that news went down. He had such a big role last week. He's such a consistent target. And when you get Josh Gordon out of the mix, it just opens up a larger role for him and definitely increases his touchdown upside. And then David Njoku, $3,000 at tight end, does the same for him. So it just kind of makes those Browns a little bit more likable targets for me, I think.
All right, we're going to go to some of these Facebook questions. Steve, receivers under $4,200. You got any thoughts?
Oh, boy, you're going to throw that right at me without it. I mean, Pettis. I mean, yeah, we just talked about it. Dante Pettis. I mean, I feel like he's in such a great spot here. I think he legitimately can see 5 to 7 targets in this game. I feel like he's someone you have to definitely look at in that 49ers team.
Gary, do you have the lobby or the prices pulled up? What about you? You got any receivers under $4,200 you like?
I think we've mentioned a couple of them already. I think Mike Williams is probably my favorite of that tier just because no Tyrell Williams in this game. A lot of those catches did kind of come in a weird garbage time situation, but that entire game script is going to be strange in Buffalo. And you know what? Even if I'd rather play Njoku at 3,000 in my tight end slot, but if you're really desperate, Callaway's apparently starting. I don't think he's going from 16% to like 80, but he could see like 50% of the snaps in this game, and maybe he catches a long touchdown. He is talented.
Jeff, receivers under 4,200. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I personally don't really think you have to go that low this week. There's a lot of value just above that at 46 to 5. But Dante Pettis is the obvious name. I'd throw Bruce Ellington out there. I know Will Fuller's active, but Watson and Ellington have a very good rapport from preseason. Ellington's looked good, caught a touchdown last week. So I wouldn't be shocked if he found the end zone again or just put up a decent PPR game at 3,800.
Hey, Julian, James Edick asking on Facebook, Aaron Rodgers or Alex Smith?
Why do we have to go with either of these guys? What are we doing?
Well, explain that one. Explain that one.
I guess you go Smith by default because Rodgers is playing with a knee brace against the Vikings.
So last week
Dalton had a decent game in that matchup last week, so I guess you go Alex Smith.
Last week didn't convince you though with Rodgers. He can do it on one leg and in the fourth quarter.
The one-leg wonder.
Again, it's just he's going to be a lot more sore probably this week and going against a much better defense. So I don't think we need to pay up for that spot.
Why are you hating on Smith so much?
Yeah, why? Answer.
Why?
Now.
because there are other better options, and we've been through.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Julian for once, because Patrick Mahomes is $100 more expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Got a lot of nods on that one. All right.
All right, calm down.
Steve, T.Y. or Golden Tate?
Oh, it's got to be Golden Tate. He's not being talked about enough this week. I mean, I feel like he's in such a great spot here. That's not even close. It's definitely Golden Tate.
Oh, Golden Tate. Do you agree on that one, Jeff?
I do. I think a real sneaky stack this week is Matt Stafford, Golden Tate, and Kenny Golladay. Detroit's running game is basically nil. Matt Stafford probably going to have to pass a ton again. It's a good matchup for Golden Tate. Marvin Jones is probably going to see Richard Sherman. So.
Dylan Schmittler asking, would McCaffrey work against the Falcons? Jeff, you really liked McCaffrey earlier in this program, so explain to Dylan why.
I mean, Atlanta just does not cover the running back position well out of the backfield. Christian McCaffrey's a great receiver. He's going to get a ton of volume. Love it.
That works for me, dude.
What about this one? Garion, Jamal Williams or Corey Clement?
Oof. I'd probably just have to say Jamal Williams based solely on the fact that he's probably going to see more volume. I get the Clement thing, but like Wendell Smallwood could play 25% of the snaps today. I do think Ajayi gets a bit of a jump. I'm not a real big Ajayi guy, but no Sproles probably just means a little bit more Ajayi than Clement all of a sudden being super viable.
Guys, update, 5 minutes. Don't freak out. You guys don't freak out, okay?
Steve, it sounds like Mitch Kronk is freaking out. He says, somebody help. Ted Ginn or Philip Dorsett?
I feel like you just got to have to go with Ginn just because the Jaguars obviously are that elite defense there, but I'm really not on either one. So, I mean, if that's where you're going at, I mean, you might need more help.
Yeah, it sounds like he may need more help. Anyone else in the quad box actually think they would go with Dorsett over Ginn?
Nah, I don't
Not in
think
this
so.
matchup.
DeAndre Hopkins or Antonio Brown? Tough call, says Darius Jackson. Julian, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Brown is certainly the cash play here in that matchup at home against Kansas City. But I've been saying all week, I love this spot for DeAndre Hopkins. You'll get lower ownership. And that matchup with Tennessee, they just got burned by Kenny Stills for over 100 yards and a pair of touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins is getting plugged right into that same spot. So I love Hopkins this week.
Steve, PPR, Devontae Adams or Cooper Kupp?
Oh, it's definitely got to be Cooper Kupp. I mean, Adams is on 100% healthy. He's got a bad matchup here. Go with Kupp.
All right.
Guys, we have about 3 minutes to go here, so let's get some slate-approved picks. Feel free to add a little bit to it.
Some flavor.
Jeff, let's start with you. Who is your lock play today and why?
Yeah, I just go back to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the volume is there. He's really good. Carolina's going to have to rely on him in this game to stay close or possibly win. So Christian McCaffrey at 7K. I wouldn't be shocked. Again, I'll say it again. I wouldn't be shocked if he outscores Alvin Kamara today.
Garion, we're going to stick with the Canadians. Who's your slate-approved pick and why?
I'll have the same slate-approved pick this week as I had last week. I just think James Conner is still far too inexpensive. You look at the price that Le'Veon Bell would be for this contest, you know, that's suggesting that James Conner is not 70% of the back that Le'Veon Bell is. And we saw last week, he's not the same guy, but the situation's not changing. So at that 6-7 price point, I still have a lot of James Conner.
Steve, who do you got as your lock of the play, or lock of the day, rather?
Yeah, it's not going to be anything groundbreaking here. It's got to be Antonio Brown. I mean, he's going to be with a highest owned, probably wide receiver, but I have him paired with Emmanuel Sanders in all of my lineups. I think both of those guys are in huge spots today.
And finally, Julian, wrap us up with your slate-approved pick, please, and tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Gary in here. It would be James Conner, but just to give something different, I think everybody's going to be all over Conner, all over Tevin Coleman, and people are forgetting about Melvin Gordon. Christian McCaffrey's a guy a lot of people are going to be playing, like Jeff said. So Melvin Gordon, people are afraid of that matchup against the Bills a little bit because Alex Collins let down last week. I think Melvin Gordon has potential to be the best running back play on this slate.
All right, guys, thank you so much for helping us get ready for week 2. We're just about there. So we appreciate the time as always.
Thanks, guys. You can all say thank you now.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Emerson. Bye.
You're welcome. You're
Bye,
welcome.
Jeff. See you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, so it should be a good day. Keep it to DraftKings and the DK Live app, by the way, because Reed Fowler and Steve have some information on there for tonight's showdown between the Cowboys and the Giants.
Yeah, so did you learn anything today from all this? I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I learned a lot. Nothing specific. No, I just learned. I absolutely was information overload for me. I'm not very smart and intelligent, and I feel overwhelmed, and my back is ridiculously sweaty right now.
Yeah, you're actually sweating it out. I learned that even though Aaron Rodgers proved last week he could play on one leg, people still freaking out about using him, and that brace perhaps scaring some people off him. So he might be low ownership today.
By the way, if you were actually thinking of playing Marcus Mariota, he was warming up on the field, but Blaine Gabbert was taking the first team reps out on the field. So again, a big one for the Titans facing the Texans. That defense is probably, Texans defense is probably going to have a circus. It's going to be ridiculous going up against Tennessee today.
Very true. All right, guys, this has been The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia. We're going to be back here tomorrow at 6 p.m., so be sure to tune in then. And for now, we are out of here.
Deuces.